All right, this morning we have a special guest, Jesse Erhart. If you make your way up, Jesse is with the Refuge, and he will be, I don't know, we may be the first church, but he's going to make his way to all the churches in the community and share the Word of God and what the Refuge is about and how God is working in the Refuge. And so I am excited to have you here, Jesse, and I know that God will use you as the sermon says, Jesus calls you misfit. So let me welcome the first misfit.
It's a very distinct honor and pleasure to be with you guys this morning. Like Pastor Harold said, the Minister Alliance actually come up with this idea last month in our meeting that maybe I should go and speak to the various churches of Alney and just kind of share a little bit about the heart of what's going on in that mysterious big metal building over there by Western Heights. I know I've heard a lot of crazy rumors and things that who knows what's going on in that building, and so I'd just like to share a little bit of that with you this morning. But first of all, it's interesting, it's neat to see some familiar faces, and some of you I haven't met yet. I've been here a year and a half, and I know it's hard to believe that you haven't met everybody in the city of Alney in a year and a half. But I'm excited to get to know some of you and to have met some of you this morning. Again, my name is Jesse Erhart, and I'm the director over at the Refuge. It's a local mission here in Alney that really got started with some folks a few years back. And from what I understand, if you trace it all the way back, the roots are actually here out of the Methodist Church from the Rollins family back there in the back row. But before we get going, I'd like to share a little bit about God's Word with you this morning. If you have your Bibles with you this morning, turn to John chapter 4. I know the screen says we're going to be 1 through 40. We're going to be skipping around a little bit. This is a story that many of you are probably familiar with. This is a Samaritan woman at the well that Jesus sits down and has a conversation with. And certainly, Harold limited me to only 2 hours this morning, so we're not going to be able to speak on all of it. But I'd just like to just glean a couple things out of that. Okay. So we're going to start in actually verse 3. It says, "When the Lord learned of this, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, 'Will you give me a drink?' His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, 'You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?' For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." I'd like to just stop there. I'm sure a lot of you already know the history behind the Samaritans. And the Samaritans actually come out of the Israelites. This was back when the two kingdoms were divided. In the northern kingdom, of course, God decreed that all the Israelites would not intermarry with the countries around them because he didn't want them defiling the religious practices that he had set up with the priesthood. Well, the Assyrians come in 722 BC, and there was a big war. And the northern kingdom disobeyed God, intermarried with some pagan cultures around them, and gave birth to the Samaritan country. The Samaritans defiled the religion that God had set up to worship him. They just took the first 5 books of the Bible, scrapped the rest of this stuff, and started integrating pagan rituals and ceremonies into what God had ordained the way for these people to worship. And so the Jews, of course, watching the Samaritans defile their religion, well, they didn't think much of them. And in fact, they hated them. And on top of that, if a Jew were to walk through Samaria, he would literally, as soon as he got out of there, he would take his hand and brush all the sand off of them before he got back into Jewish territory, because he didn't want that garbage getting into Israel. And in fact, the word here, when she says, you Samaritans do not associate, or you Jews do not associate with us Samaritans, actually means that we're not going to use the same utensils. The Jews disliked the Samaritans so much that if a Samaritan drank from a cup, no Jew would drink from it ever. This is how much they disliked them. And so, if you're like me and you got a little age on you and you've seen different strokes, or you've seen, I think it's different strokes. Gary Coleman, anybody know Gary Coleman? This is one of those, what you talking about, Willis, kind of moments, okay? He's like, whoa, what is going on right now, okay? She was very taken back. And it had insult to injury kind of thing. She was a woman. And Jesus was considered a teacher. She would have recognized this through his garbs and his clothes. And that a teacher would speak to a woman in the middle of the day was a very big social faux pas. That did not happen. And so she was very taken back. Why are you even talking to me? The implications of Jesus speaking to this woman is kind of what I want to focus on. Is who Jesus sought after in his ministry. Let's continue to read and find out a little bit more what's going on. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with the well, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, and did also his sons and his flocks and herds? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water that I don't go thirsty and have to keep coming up here to draw water. And listen to Jesus' response. He told her, go call your husband and come back. She says, I have no husband. Jesus says to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. So now we find out a little bit more. Jesus has sat down with a Samaritan that the Jews despise. He's having a conversation in midday with a woman, which is socially unacceptable. And he's also sat down with a town adulteress. This is the reason why she's leaving the town to go to Jacob's well to get water in the middle of the day. This well would have been a mile or 2 outside of town, and she didn't want to encounter anybody because she felt so ashamed of who she was. This lady is the lowest of low, the worst of the worst. Society would have marked her off as garbage. And yet this is who Jesus chooses to sit down and speak to. Jesus looks at her. He sees her religion. He sees her ethnicity. He sees her sex. He sees her sin. And he is not disgusted. He is not offended. And he's not throw up his nose and leave, as many of us would do when we're around people that we don't like. And let's look at the result of Jesus having a genuine interaction and sharing the gospel with one of life's misfits. If you'll skip with me to verse 25. The woman said, I know that the Messiah is coming. Okay, she's got a little bit of religion. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I who speak to you am he. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised. Again, they were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But no one asked, what do you want? Or why are you talking with her? Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I did. Could this be the Christ that came out of the town and made their way toward him? And if you'll skip just a little bit further down, verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them. And he stayed 2 days, and because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. So because Jesus didn't follow culture, because Jesus sat down with the lowest of low ethnicities, with a lady who believed in a religion that defiled the very system that he helped set up from the foundations of the world, okay? Because he sat down with a woman that was socially acceptable, because he sat down with an adulteress, somebody who was entrenched in her sin and riled in it. An entire town was saved. An entire town come to see Jesus. And he sat and ministered with them for 2 days. And there's a lot more that can be taken from this scripture. We could probably spend a year on just this particular story. But what I want to focus on a little bit is what happened right after that as well. Jesus then goes to the Jews. He walks into Galilee. And these are the people who are doing it right, so to speak. These are the religious leaders. These are the Pharisees. These are the people who would be attending church on a regular basis. And these are the people who are giving tithes. And these are the people who are following the rabbinic code and all these sorts of things. And what is the result of him going there? He rebukes them and rebukes them and rebukes them. And he says, unless you see a sign, you won't believe. And what's interesting, the next part of his ministry, the only person that we know that comes to salvation is a Herodian official that begs for the life of his son, who's desperate. And then after that, Jesus will go to Nazareth. He's pretty familiar with Nazareth. And he begins preaching there. And the reaction there is they go to run him off a cliff and try to kill him. And these are the self-proclaimed righteous. These are the religious people. These are the ones who are supposedly doing it right. And as we think about that, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. It kind of breaks my heart to think that the people that God had protected and set up and raised out of Egypt, set up a land for them, these are the very people who have turned to ceremonies rather than to Jesus. What's interesting is the majority of Jesus' ministry did not come from the talented, the socially acceptable, or even the likable. They came from the broken, the addicted, the socially awkward, the poor, the rejected, the hateful, the people who most other people, if given the opportunity, would avoid at all costs. Just before this story, Jesus calls his followers to him, his disciples. These are fishermen, tax collectors, people who couldn't make it studying under a rabbi. They weren't insanely intelligent. They weren't dedicated. Jesus simply said, come. And we just celebrated Christmas. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. Had the opportunity to go up into Colorado and get in the mountains and those sorts of things. But one thing I did miss, and I hate to admit because my mom is here today. Not that I hate that I missed my mom. But I didn't have the opportunity to spend Christmas with my mom. And every year, I don't know if your mom is like this, but they try to push those classic movies. Okay? Christmas Story, Wonderful Life. And then there's that claymation Rudolph thing. You guys ever seen that thing where Rudolph's flying around? You got the what is that, the Yeti who then just needed a tooth or something from the dentist? I don't remember all the story. But something that really strikes me is that island of misfit toys. These are the toys who missing a leg. I think there's a doll with no eyes, and there's like a Jim in the box. What is it? It's not a Jack in the box, so he's wrong or something. And I want to believe if Jesus, I hope this isn't heresy, if Jesus were to go into the world of Rudolph, I want to believe that he would head straight for the island of misfit toys. Because these are the broken, the lost, the hurting. The ones that have been pushed out into an island, and their cups are completely empty. And it falls right in line with James 2. James 2 tells us, as James addresses the church was reserving seats up front for the rich because they had something to offer them. And the poor folks would come in barely clothed, they would say, why don't you sit in the back there? Keep you back there. And James addresses this, and he just smashes. He says, don't show favoritism or be a respecter of persons. Okay? Don't show favoritism to the haves and push off the have-nots. Don't show favoritism to people who have something to offer you, but I want you to reach out to the people who have nothing to offer. And he says this bold statement at the end of it. He says, it is because it is the poor and earthly things that God is going to fill richly in love. What a powerful, powerful idea. And so I say all this, before we get to about the refuge, I say all this because there's a couple things that I kind of want to share. The first question is, which one are we? Which group would I fall into? If Jesus were to come back today, would I be too religious to recognize him? Would I have all the answers already, and would I turn and tell the creator of the universe, I don't need your help. I've got it all figured out. Or would I be somebody who comes together with the people who realize that we've all contracted the same disease called sin? And that we were all broken, and we're all hurting. We're all in desperate need of the great physician, who's the only one who can heal us of our ailments. And I would hope to say that when Jesus comes, that we would fall into that second category. I know there are some very godly people in here. And I have seen some incredible hearts in here. And there are a lot of fantastic things happening for God through this church. I've gotten to see your pastor's heart over the last year and a half. And I don't know that there are many people who can compare with him as far as just a love for people and a love for God. But at the same time, if we were to stand before a holy God, I would hope that my imperfections would draw me to my knees, because I know I need and in desperate need of his help. And so I say all that to open about what the refuge is. First of all, the refuge is staffed by some people who understand that we're just broken. I'm not a great orator. I'm not a great speaker. I'm certainly not the most intelligent person on the planet. The staff that God has brought to the refuge, we're not insanely talented. But we have Jesus. Jesus has come, and he's brought a team together that love God and love people. And we want to accomplish a mission that accomplishes what he wants. And the second thing is our desire is that the refuge be a safe place for teens in our community to come. And they don't have to be fearful. They don't have to be fearful of being judged. They don't have to be fearful of being bullied. They don't have to be fearful of the outside world, that they can come on a regular basis, participate in some games, hear the Word of God on a regular basis, and be loved by people who want to display Jesus Christ to them. And if we're going to fall in line with the way that Jesus did this thing, that includes the misfits. That includes those who maybe don't fit in school, maybe don't fit in even at home. And while we've done this, over the last, we've only been open for about 2.5 months. And we've had the opportunity to have very real conversations with students struggling with drugs, social acceptance, broken families, and holding strong to righteous physical boundaries in their relationships with the opposite sex. I've been in ministry with teenagers for over 20 years now, in one form or another. And I've not seen a greater opportunity to be able to sit down and pour into a kid's life who's just broken and hurting. And it's been an incredible, incredible blessing to be a part of that. The Refuge is a 28,000 square foot recreational building designed to spread the good news that Jesus Christ has died for our brokenness, and we can now walk with him in the newness of life. Soon we'll be reaching out to adults, and we'll be having ministry and opportunities for Christians and non-Christians alike to come out and participate in recreation and hear the Word of God every day. We've got a lot of really neat programs for the kids, but all that to be said, at 6:30 every single day we shut the whole thing down. We sit them down and we share the Word of God with them. And it's been an amazing experience thus far to see as some of the students come and they've got these huge walls up. You can tell that adults they don't get along with adults, especially ones they don't know. And as we've gone along, we've been able to see those walls come down and then be open to the gospel. So what I'd like to do is is just take a few minutes to show you a video that we brought. It got kind of cut in half on the computer back there, but that's all right. I'd like to share what we decided to do was just go through the building and with our phones and just ask the kids, what is this place? Instead of getting up here and trying to answer a bunch of questions and try to prove that we're doing ministry or display the heart of the thing, I just let the kids answer the question. They were asked a simple question: what does the Refuge mean to you, or what do you like about this place, or what is it? And so we'll just show that. Chris has got that ready for me.
I feel like I can be friends here that knows Christ, and it can help me maybe become a better Christian.
Girl, what does the Refuge mean to you?
It's a place we can come and enjoy God and stay feeling with God. Because it's the perfect place for everybody to hang out and Jesus Christ.
Okay, George, what's the Refuge mean to you?
Refuge is just a fun place to play at, talk about God, play games, sports,
I like the Refuge because I learn more about God every day. And I get closer and closer to Him. And I never forget what I learned.
What do you like about the Refuge? Nice place.
I like Refuge because it helps me come to a place where I can handle my problems in my life.
Like the Refuge.
It's definitely hang out with my friends, learn about God, and be around people that love God, and just have fun.
Refuge.
Like any day.
You like all the games?
Yes.
What else you like?
Let's see, hanging out with all my friends.
Refuge, man.
I like talking about God and Jesus, also coming here to play games.
And so they got kind of cut in half there. So I just wanted you to have a glimpse of what I get to experience every day in that building, and these students who come in, and they're incredible kids, and a lot of them are dealing with broken homes, drugs in the family, bullying, self-confidence, because they're a misfit and they don't fit in anywhere. Not all of them, but a lot of them are dealing with those things. And so it's I don't know that words can express how much of a blessing it really is to be a part of that. And so as we close today, I'd just like to offer you guys the opportunity, if there's something that God's laying on your heart to help support this mission here in town, come see me, pray about it, talk to Pastor, and we would certainly like to afford you that opportunity to help out in whatever way God has called you to help out. And then finally, we'd like to support you. We'd like to support the local church. We are not a church. We're not open on Sundays. We don't have a pastor. We don't have elders. We're not deacons. We are a local mission. We're an outreach mission. We don't want to replace the church, but empower and strengthen. Our building is free to any church that wants to use it at any time. If there's an event that Kelly and Valerie want to throw a big party or something like that, or want to do a women's conference or any of those sorts of things, and that's absolutely free to any ministry that wants to take advantage of this incredible building that God has placed in our town. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry that you didn't get to hear Pastor Braddock this morning. I'm sure that we'll have some sermons in the future to come. But anyway, I'd like to just close in prayer with you and thank you again for the opportunity just to share a little bit about what God's doing in our ministry. Gracious Heavenly Father, we are broken. We do things constantly that are in stark contradiction to how we should respond to the mercy and grace that you give us on a daily basis. God, we are imperfect. We are selfish and unkind. But by your grace and your Spirit, you do incredible things through us. You give us the strength to lift those up around us. You give us the opportunity and the encouragement to be selfless. God, you give us opportunities like the Refuge to speak your truth into the lives of those who need it. God, we just pray as we all go forth and do ministry in whatever situation that you have us in, that you would give us guidance, that we would be forever on our knees and constantly in your word. As Joshua 1 says, let us not ever allow your word to cease from leaving our lips. Let us meditate on your scriptures daily and nightly, so that we might scratch the surface on how thankful we are. Let us leave this building living our lives as living sacrifices to you in response to that great sacrifice on the cross. Father, let us always remember that if it weren't for you, where we would end up, and because of you, we now have this great promise of eternity. It's in your Son's precious and holy name.